So cool. All right. This one is in the middle because I call this the teeter-totter, which is your mindset belief system. So we have work on your craft, and then we have taking action. But in the middle, we have what we call the belief system, right? And that's belief with an F at the end. So a cool quote, there's a book called I'm Okay, You're Okay. I read this book when I first started going through the Sandler training. And so it's very, I don't always recommend it because it is a heavy psychology book. And what happens is that if you don't understand a lot of the concepts, it does throw you off. It threw me off, believe me. And I went through the training, right? But I love what this says right here. At some stage early in our lives, we adopt a position about ourselves and others that determines how we feel about everything we do. So what that means is that, again, not to get too deep here, as we grow up, we have this programming about how we see money, how we see relationships, how we see, opportunities, right? I don't know about you guys, but going to the store or doing things like, hey, what was it? What's a popular phrase? Children are to be seen and not. Who can end that phrase? Who
to be heard?
Be heard, right? So that's the programming. So think about that. If you had that programming, that's a belief system that you had. Now we're trying to negotiate with people. And like I said, consciously, you're not thinking about it, but it's that subconscious when you start to take action and you start to talk to people. So this is why we have to work on our mindset just as much as on our skill set. It's very important to work on both. I'm gonna give you guys a book here before we end today, which book to go get, which is one of my favorites that I give to team members. When it comes to, we never give team members in the first 3 weeks of them coming on, we don't ever give them a sales book. We want to give them first a mindset book to let them know and understand that, hey, if you really want to do this, you got to take ownership and you need to invest, and you need to take ownership of this position. And it's going to take you to invest and really develop a ambition. So again, we have to get rid of bad programming. We have to change how we see money. And here's the thing, guys and gals, I'm not saying that you have this problem. Maybe some of you have seen money all your life and see it a little bit different. Maybe some of you have always been told all your life, hey, don't talk to strangers. Now we're trying to negotiate deals at 50, 40 cents on the dollar, right? Like it's a vast variety of people that have this bad programming that we need to rewire. I can tell you for myself, when I first started getting into self-development, this was back in like 2013, right? I started going heavy, and then more in 2014. And then in 2015, when I got, started doing real estate, I chose real estate as my vehicle. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what vehicle to take. And my mindset, I needed to work a lot on my mindset. And even though I was doing self-development in 2013, 2014, and then more heavier in 2015, when I found out about wholesaling itself, it was through Sean Terry, who happens to be, he's here in Phoenix. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but I learned through him. And I went to my first event in 2015, October 2015. I didn't really take any action till, I hung around. I went to the meetups, but I didn't really start taking any action till like around probably January of the next year, which was 2016. And then in February of 2016, I made a conscious decision that I needed to work on my self-development even more. So what I did for a period of, I want to say, and I'm not recommending that you do this, I'm just sharing you my story here. I went through a period of I would say at least 4 months minimum, where I didn't really watch TV at all. Music was very far in between. I was listening to a lot of podcasts at work. I was in my car. Back then, webinars were really huge. So I would watch a lot of webinars. And I did that for 4 months straight. I invested in my self-development. And what's crazy about that, I was working at a job at that time. And by the time when I did that, at the end of that period, I almost felt like I didn't even belong there. Like it was like my mindset had gone so far. I saw myself where I'm at here. And I share that with you because this is true, right? We need to make sure that we're working continuously on our mindset, self-development. And how many of you guys, are you familiar with Jim Rohn? Alex, are you familiar? Or Tony? Jane? Yeah.
I've heard of him.
Okay. Yeah. So Jim Rohn. So it's ROHN. Excellent. That was like one of my first mentors. Excellent speaker, big on self-development. And he said something really big on one of his presentations where he said that seldom does income surpass self-development, right? which means that if you want to be able to make as much money as possible and you want to succeed, right? Your success and your income is never going to surpass the level of your self-development. So it's a continuous growth. It's a continuous investment into how you see things different. And this is why I put this in here, because I think it's really important to understand that there is some caveats to this though, right? We do need to adopt new information to rewire our belief system. We got to change that. We got to get that out of our, whatever it is that we believe, if you saw money a certain way, if you're programmed like children should be seen, not heard, all that good stuff, right? Don't talk to strangers. You walk into your parents' house and they're doing taxes and you're like, what are you guys doing? Nothing. Get out of here. Go back to the room. All right, there's people that have never really talked about finances, right? And now we're getting into a position where we're going out and buying properties, 200, 300, 400 in Washington, 1 million, right? Different phases. Got to turn off the noise. There's going to be a lot of noise. You're going to want to go learn everything. We got to deposit new information. And here's one that I like to leave with you guys, because I think this is important. When you are learning, I learned this about 4 years ago, because I wanted to read every book. I wanted to listen to every podcast, which I did. And about 4 years ago, we hired a Navy SEAL, ex-Navy SEAL member, and came in and talked to the team. And in that presentation, he said something very powerful. He goes, he brought this up: learn just for now, not just because. And we were like, well, what the heck does that even mean? He goes, well, here's what happens, right? Tony D, you're reading a book, right? And then you meet with me, and I said, man, Tony, I just read this freaking book. It's great. It helped me a lot, and I recommend it to you. Now you go and read that book, right? So let's say you do read it. Let's say you read it, but maybe it didn't impact you much. You just thought it was a good book. But the next level is that you didn't take actions on any of those items that you read in that book. So what he said is that what happens is that you didn't actually educate yourself. You only entertain yourself. So that's why it's really important to learn just for now, not just because you want to read, a book that someone recommended. I would take that book and I would just say, okay, I'll read it when I get to it. Right now I'm focusing, where do I need to get better? What am I going to read? What am I going to watch? What am I going to hear or listen, that I'm going to go out and apply? So it's very important that when you start investing more in your self-development, just make sure that you are learning for now, and not just because you want to hear somebody that recommended a podcast or something like that. Because again, if you're not going to do any of those things, you're not really educating yourself. You're just entertaining yourself. So that was pretty mind blowing when I heard that, because I wanted to listen to everything, right? Like I was really hungry to better myself and do more, And when I heard this, I was like, makes a lot of sense, because I didn't do half the stuff that I listened to, but I spent hours listening to it, right? I spent hours listening to podcasts and things like that. So the last thing on this is learn for just now, not just because. But I want to stop right here. Is there anything that stands out on this particular part for anyone before I get to the last part, which is taking action? It's not necessarily a question, but anything that stood out or any clarification about it? Cool. Clear as mud. Let's go. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to cover, and I told you this was kind of be some fundamentals, right? Like we took it way back, because here's the problem. Why do I start with this? Why do I love starting with this? It does not benefit anyone on here, especially the people that are new, for us to jump into a script, for us to actually talk about how to talk to sellers, how to negotiate, what's the best liners. Because if you don't have this foundation, like that stuff potentially will give you some success. But the idea here is not for us to just have success in between, right? Like we want to build a system all the way from the ground up that gives us the capability of repeating that success over and over, right? You can get a script, yeah, and you can read the script, and yeah, maybe you'll get that motivated seller that's like ready to go. Like those sellers, the motivated sellers, you can tell them, hey, no, Mr. Seller, the grass is blue and the sky is green. Sign right here, and they're gonna sign the contract. But we know in this market right now, understanding that's not happening, right? Like the motivated seller is too far by in between. So this is why we have to lay this foundation, so that way you start building from, you start setting this foundation. And then what happens is that once we get into the tactics and the strategies, negotiations, like you already know you have something that you can lean on, which is your foundation, right? That's always good to have that. You got to have a foundation that you can lean on, just like a house, right? You can't build a house without first laying the foundation. Can't build a building without first laying the foundation. And we'll jump into a little bit more on the pass system next week when it comes to the strategies. So that way you guys, this is like taking it just one more step back before that. All right.